Good evening. Today is September 3rd, 2022. I'm Robert Crescione.
I'm John Gatsis.
And since it was the 3rd of September, if you remember the Temptations song from 1972,
Vaguely.
Papa was a Rolling Stone.
To be honest, I was probably more likely listening to things like Free and Black Sabbath and all that, if I'm completely honest about it. So
72, that was 50 years ago.
Hard to believe.
Now, where I was living, you could only get mostly AM radio at that time, where I was. We didn't have an FM station that could reach where we were at the time. At night, you could listen to some stuff, but mostly AM. So yeah, I remember it well.
Well, we were in Hawaii in those days, and
yeah.
They had a few. They had a few FM stations.
Yeah.
That was the days of the album-oriented rock format, the progressive. Where the DJ would say things. And before that, we heard the latest
I remember that
Cohen piece.
I remember that well.
Right.
But I was talking to somebody earlier today, and they said, "You appear to have some animus toward the left." And I said, "Well."
You mean, notwithstanding the fact that I have a TV show
Right.
specifically oriented toward
Exactly. All I could say was, yes, guilty as charged.
Right.
In fact, I got to thinking about that, and I said, you know what? I really do have animus toward the left.
Well, absolutely.
And here's why. I jotted down 10 reasons.
Okay.
10 reasons, and I think these are all good reasons. One, they initiated or instituted inflationary policies.
Right.
Which is stealing my retirement away.
That's correct.
I watched my retirement shrink over 50%, and I'm furious about that. So yeah, do I have some animus? Yeah, you darn right I do. They have declared war, and Biden did this just the other night. He declared war against the working middle class.
That's right.
Calling us fascist.
Well, to be fair, he said semi-fascist.
Oh, semi-fascist.
So
okay.
I take that as a compliment. I'm semi-not a fascist.
Well, his minions, his droves of minions out there. I mean, we've already got a letter in the Rocky Mount Telegram talking about we've got to rid the U.S. of these fascists.
Right.
In which he's referring to people like me.
Right. And yet, in the same breath, because I watched, what's her name? I call her Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. What's her name? Kareem Jean-Pierre.
Jean-Pierre.
Right. She, in one breath, she's saying this is the most this is the biggest danger we face as a nation, and then she turns right around, literally in the same breath, and says they represent a very tiny fraction of the population. So, which is it, people?
Yeah,
they can't even get their BS straight.
No, they can't. And when Biden refers to it, and when the left refers to us, they're talking about 70+ million.
That's
no,
right.
no. Let me rephrase that. 70+ million voters.
That's correct. And what they're really talking about is virtually everybody that came before them living in this country, because almost nobody, even 20 years ago, would have embraced any of the lunacy that these people are promulgating.
Right. The left, the animus, I feel, they have facilitated and mobilized the criminal class against the working class in this country.
Right.
They've denied biological science and common sense in their dispute of gender.
Right.
They use science to commence a reign of oppression.
Pseudoscience.
Pseudoscience. False science.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oppression, manipulation, and control. That's what they claimed was the direction of science.
Right.
They have denied science and pushed this climate alarmism that's driving this green energy, that's driving Colorado to cut thousands of their citizens off on a 90-degree day, cut their thermostats
lock
off,
them at 78.
Lock them out, They have, that's what drives California to say, okay, well, we're going to outlaw gasoline engine vehicles, but we really need you not to plug in your vehicle and charge it.
Right, that's right.
At these times during the day.
Well, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance with these people.
Absolutely is. This administration has mobilized the FBI, the DOJ, and the IRS, which the IRS has been mobilized under several administrations.
Right.
If you remember, the Clintons had well over 1,000 dossiers, if you will, IRS dossiers on their political enemies. Lois Lerner was mobilized to attack the Tea Party crowd.
That's right.
That's one way that they put the Tea Party back in the barn.
Well, that's one of those situations too. We talked about that before, where you don't know what you don't know. We have because Obama won that election. We have no idea what really took place.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I mean, the amount of subterfuge and lying and stealing and cheating and manipulation and IRS oppression of opposing viewpoints that took place, we only know the tip of the iceberg because he won. That's kind of what precipitated the whole Russiagate thing with Trump. They didn't expect him to win. He did, and they had to scramble quickly to figure out how are we going to deflect the fact that we are wide open and vulnerable to being exposed by the person we had no idea was going to win.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. The left apologizes for the communists who have killed, or the communist philosophy, not necessarily the communists, but the communist philosophy. This resulted in the death of well over 100 million people.
Easily. That's a conservative estimate.
Conservative estimate.
Well, they're communists.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
Everybody wants to sugarcoat that.
Yeah.
I mean, the modern left and the modern Democratic Party has been completely overtaken, or perhaps they've simply revealed the fact that they are communists. Mm-hmm. They are Marxists in every way that you can. I mean, I challenge somebody to demonstrate where they're not. I mean, their philosophy and their policies. Look, the Communist Party USA, who used to float candidates in the past, said, yeah, we don't need to float candidates anymore because the Democratic Party pretty much shares our platform.
Yeah.
Okay, what more indictment do you need than that?
Not much.
Right.
They have allowed so many election anomalies,
mm-hmm.
and I'm being tame here, and I'm calling them election anomalies. There are many, many, many people out there who don't trust elections anymore.
Well, and that's kind of been on purpose too. It
absolutely is.
Part of their purpose was to steal an election, mm-hmm. or to get a different result than the one that would have been obtained had they done it in the traditional, honest way. But also part of their objective is to destroy the confidence that people have in the elections. They want to get to a point where we effectively don't have elections, or that they're meaningless, or that they're rubber stamp type elections. They're working very hard to get to what I call a uniparty, a genuine one-party state. Right now, we kind of have the uniparty in Washington. You've got mm-hmm. these lame Republicans who are there just to present sort of a loyal opposition, and you've got a few sincere ones who are doing some things, or trying to do some things in our favor and in defense of the Constitution. But mostly it's a uniparty. But right now, the modern Democratic Party is doing everything they can to achieve a one-party state.
Yep.
I mean, as evidenced by the speech that Biden gave earlier in this week, which is just the irony. Is it lost on people that earlier in the week he's calling most of us semi-fascist, and then he gives a speech against a backdrop that has more fascist imagery than anything I've seen since the movie Starship Troopers. I mean, he's standing with this blood red background, so red that the TV broadcast color balance was shifted green, made him look green because of the compensation for the red. I mean, that in itself looked ridiculous. And then he's got these military personnel standing on either side, and he's ranting and raving about MAGA and the MAGA philosophy, and then turns around and says the next day, "Oh, I don't think any Trump voter is a threat to this country." Well, I don't know what he thinks and knows. He's a septuagenarian, soon to be octogenarian robot who's being programmed with meds and being put out there with a script that he barely can stay on.
I agree.
Okay, but the people that are pushing him and that party and that administration, they're looking to create a one-party state.
Absolutely. And another thing that the left has done in filling the ranks of institutions and government and agencies with perverts, with criminals, with every deviant known to man, is they've shaken the confidence of Americans.
Right.
They've shaken the confidence of not just Americans, but everyone around the globe in the American institutions.
That's right.
We saw them do it with the church.
Yes.
When you put communists in positions of power, they fill the ranks with these perverts and deviants that they can control.
Right.
And it destroys confidence in these institutions, but at that point, the institution itself is basically corrupted and almost destroyed. They did it with the Boy Scouts.
No, absolutely.
Preventing people from calling out these perverts who wanted to be around little boys.
That's right.
They did it with the Boy Scouts. They've done, and they're doing it right now in the schools and the other institutions with sexualizing the children.
Yeah, the public school situation is it's unbelievable. I mean, if if I could wave a magic wand, I would completely privatize the school system, sell off all public school assets to the marketplace, and let individuals create education products that fit the needs of our children. If you want to send your child to pre-tranny U, okay, you can do that all day long, and that'd be your choice. I think that would be a minority position.
It would be a very minority position.
Right.
Absolutely would. Most people want their children to be educated, to be skilled, to be competent in life. The skills necessary for life.
And the nation would save a bloody fortune.
They would.
Because any of these government-run entities are an absolute waste of money, and they're a fraud, and they're run by people who hate this country, and most of them, at this point, from what I can see, aren't even competent. Okay, they're barely literate themselves in many cases. If you actually see some of these public school teachers, especially from some of these blue states, you see them, having a conversation. Literally, they aren't even, they split the King's English, and their delivery is bad, their vocabulary is poor, and they're not impressive.
They are not.
Add that to the visual of a nose ring and green hair and a bunch of tats, and I can't believe people are accepting that as the teachers for their children. Unbelievable.
Here. So, when someone asks me if I have animus to the left, yes, I absolutely do.
Right.
For those 10 reasons, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
If I want to do the
summary.
If I want to do the 30,000-foot summary, I would say I got one reason: because their philosophy is fundamentally evil and corrupt, and it's based on theft. It's based on appropriating other people's efforts toward their own ends. It's a selfish, narcissistic worldview. And that's an objective statement. That can be shown to be true by analyzing objectively their actions and their policy prescriptions. It's that simple.
Absolutely.
In fact, they're psychopaths.
They are. Many of them are.
That's right.
They absolutely are. I think that the administration right now is filled with psychopaths.
Absolutely.
We have a transvestite as in a Navy uniform as an admiral, Rachel Levine.
Be clear, not just a transvestite, a transsexual.
Yeah, right. And I'm sorry, and you team him up with Sam Brinton, who's into the puppy play scene, in a dress, the two of them in a dress, on an official government stage, flanked by a national seal, and you send this around the globe. Does this inspire respect on the national stage?
No, it inspires ridicule, and it inspires aggression on the part of our adversaries.
It absolutely does. That's the one thing that Trump was absolutely correct about. If you demonstrate strength, your adversaries and your allies as well respect you.
Well, that was one of the things that was in the news this week, was the passing of Mikhail Gorbachev, right? Well, the revisionist history going on there, and I'm starting to figure out how this revisionist history is so successful. Again, with respect to education, they so dumbed down the population, they don't know anything.
Well, that's correct.
Half the people, probably 30 years old and below, they don't even know who Mikhail Gorbachev is or was.
That's correct.
Okay, so they can spin some tale about who he was, and they just soak it up. But they actually are crediting him with the end of the Cold War. Okay, they're saying, well, if it weren't for Mikhail Gorbachev is the one who ended the Cold War and helped bring about the dissolution of the Soviet Union. That's just not true.
It is not true.
Just not true.
Lived through that.
In fact, I was in Washington, D.C. in December of 1987 when Mikhail Gorbachev visited. I was there for a work-related thing, but I remember all the motorcade went right by the hotel where I was staying. And in summary, what really happened is the United States, under the auspices of Ronald Reagan, I have my criticisms there as well, but under the auspices of Ronald Reagan and an aggressive remilitarization, they simply outspent them. The Soviet Union's defense posture, their budget was like 25-30% of GDP. Ours was 6, we doubled it to 12. And they couldn't double theirs. They were already a basket case economy. They simply couldn't keep up. They were coming apart at the seams. They knew that. Andropov, who was Gorbachev's predecessor, he knew that, okay, and cultivated this sort of Western-friendly individual in the form of Gorbachev to put in that top spot. Because, if anybody who grew up in that period remembers, all those Soviet leaders with these big bushy eyebrowed, in the dark suits, and they just look classically like the Russian communists that you associate with that period. Gorbachev seemed to have a little bit softer appeal. He had this sort of attractive wife, yada yada. But in the end of the day, he was thoroughly a communist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
And the only reason he participated in the demise of the Soviet Union because he had no choice. He didn't promulgate any of the policies,
correct,
okay, that brought it down. That was strictly a function of Western resolve through Britain and the United States and the deployment of the Pershing missiles and some of those other actions they took. That's the history.
Right.
Okay. And these pinheads in the media are rewriting it and eulogizing Mikhail Gorbachev, which is instructional in itself because it reveals what their mindset is.
Right.
They're communists.
Exactly. Well, they awarded him the Nobel Prize.
Right.
They awarded Barack Obama the Nobel Prize
before he even
did anything.
Inaugurated.
Exactly. So that's the precursor to the revisionist history.
Right.
Because that's the basis by which future generations look back and say, oh,
well, he won the Nobel Prize.
The Nobel Prize. He must have been a great man. Well, no, he was just a communist who lost.
That's right. My uncle was always funny because anytime he would learn that somebody earned the Nobel Prize, he'd say, well, I didn't know he was a communist.
But the generations now, they're banning about this term fascist. Well, first of all, they're misapplying the term in every case.
Absolutely.
Fascism is not wanting a constitutional republic.
Well,
Fascism
that's right.
is not having respect for individual rights and individual liberty. Fascism is not preserving the Electoral College as constitutionally outlined. None of that is fascism.
Right.
Questioning an election is not fascism.
That's correct.
Accepting the line from the official sources like Jean-Pierre and others in Washington, accepting those official lines, hook, line, and sinker, that is actually the support of fascism and communism, because it takes those people. Without those people, communism and fascism fall on their face.
Well, that's correct. That's correct. Well, I would say if anything, it is exhibiting some of the classic elements of fascism, which really has no formal definition, frankly.
Right.
It's a kind of a nebulous thing.
Absolutely.
It's really fundamentally, though, the consensus is it's really fundamentally an economic arrangement where the corporations get in bed with the government and impose a top-down authoritarian rule over. There's nominal private property, but fundamentally the corporations and the government, collude to impose their will. And now, from where I sit, that sounds an awful lot like what's going on with big tech and the other big pharma and the government. So anybody who's exhibiting the characteristics of fascism, it's the modern Democratic Party and the Biden administration.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They went to Facebook and said, "We need you to do
That's
this,"
right.
and Facebook said, "Okay, no problem.
We'll suppress that Hunter Biden laptop story." That's right. And they raided the home of a former president. Now, if that's not banana republic fascist behavior, I don't know what is. And yet somehow we're fascist because we want to respect the Second Amendment, or we think maybe the fact that they manipulated the voting rules during the pandemic, and stopped the vote in the middle of the night. We raise questions about that and want to know, gee, gosh, ever since I was paying attention to politics, I've always heard you have to win Florida and you have to win Ohio to win the presidency. Somehow Trump won those, and yet somehow they stopped counting at 2 a.m. and a few cities suddenly miraculously turned the tide in a couple of key states. I'm not allowed to be suspicious of that. I'm sorry.
And I'm sorry. If you've seen the Michigan statistical printout, the curves, the voting curves.
Right.
Number one, that's an impossibility.
That's correct.
That never happens.
Mathematical impossibility.
That cannot happen. The improbability there is so great that it can never happen like that. But they're saying, we found all these ballots and they just happen to all be for Biden. I'm sorry, and when they come out and they say, there's never been a shred of evidence. What they're saying is that no judge has ever allowed one of these election cases to get to the point of hearing the evidence.
That's right.
They have not even gone through discovery. So they've always been stopped at the very beginning for standing. Oh, you don't have standing? I'm not looking at the evidence. Bill Barr says there's no evidence.
Right.
Well, you got to look.
Well, look, even if you discount all the things we just talked about, it has been established that the Hunter Biden laptop story was suppressed.
Absolutely.
Okay, by big tech and the media, and now, it turns out, at the behest of the FBI, right there, that to me represents an aspect or a form of fraud.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I don't even need any of those other things to be true.
Right.
Okay, to be able to make my case that election was manipulated and stolen, and yet somehow, if you say that, you're a threat to our democracy, which is the other phrase that they're used, which really means our socialistic democracy, our socialistic paradigm that we've established.
Exactly. We got to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit more of this and how communism has crept in, and how I think Joe Biden is the face of communism in this country.
Is, yeah.
And we're going to talk about that a little bit when we come back. And if you disagree with us, or you agree with us, or you have something to say, give us a call when we come back.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after this. Stay tuned.
Phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, attorney at law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
Safe and secure. These two words are simple yet powerful. In order to feel this way, you should know that you have the tools necessary to provide safety and security for yourself and your loved ones. As with any tools, learning how to properly use them is best learned from experts who we know we can trust. Experts who have a proven track record and a commitment to serve and protect. Enroll now in Sheriff Keystone's North Carolina Concealed Handgun Carry class, taught at the CPF Training Center in Rocky Mount. Sheriff Stone utilizes a first-in-class classroom environment and indoor firing range. This ensures a training experience that is welcoming to both first-time firearms students and those with more experience. An attentive staff that takes time to teach students the legal requirements of becoming a permitted concealed carry citizen. In addition, Sheriff Clee Atkinson teaches students situational awareness, self-defense, and skills needed to avoid becoming a victim. As you know, Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson have committed their lives to serving and protecting. There is a reason Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson's class book in advance. Come learn from two of the region's most seasoned and professional public servants. Safety and security, two simple but powerful words that can be a part of who you and your family are. Call 252-813-8898. Register today.
Every dad deserves comfort that's just right. And at the Badcock Home Furniture and More Father's Day sale, that's exactly what you'll find. Starting with buy one, get one free recliners. Plus, save hundreds on reclining sofas and sectionals. And get a free foundation with select mattresses, including Sealy. Find the styles and savings that are just right for Dad. Only at Badcock Home Furniture and More. Just right.
We are back, and as I said, if you have an opinion, give us a call. The number flashes on the screen there, so feel free to give us a call. We welcome counterpoints.
Sure
and,
do.
And you think we're wrong? Convince us.
I mean, look, I'm always open to. I've changed my mind about things, a few things over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I started eating cauliflower.
All right. Well, there you go.
I am able to change.
One thing I didn't change my mind about though is that I don't like old communist folk music like Pete Seeger.
Oh, good grief! Yeah, which the
He may come up later, you know.
I tell you what. Speaking of communism in the U.S., yeah, here we are. The post office is releasing a commemorative stamp of Pete Seeger.
Right.
If you don't know who Pete Seeger is, he was with Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Right.
That's the Peter from Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Right.
Now.
Puff the Magic Dragon, which is about smoking marijuana,
Yeah.
which seems mild by today's standards.
Right,
Yeah.
and of course at that time we didn't
Yeah.
know that, you know, and the 5, 6-year-olds, they didn't know anything
That's
about that,
right.
you know. But that's how the communists work.
That's correct.
That's how the communists work, and that's why they're pushing so hard to sexualize 4 and 5-year-old children,
Right.
pre-kindergarten
That's right.
children in some cases. But that's how the communists work. Now,
Now, I don't want to be blind about the Pete Seeger thing. He was a communist. He was a
Yes,
member of the Communist Party.
He joined the Communist Party.
Okay,
Absolutely
and
did.
he was honored by Barack Obama. He gave a concert in honor of Communist China, Soviet Union. I mean, this guy
and he
was
raised-
a bona fide card-carrying communist, and
Yes, he was.
this United States government is issuing a forever commemorative stamp. Okay.
Yep.
That's what proves to me that what you said as we went to break, that the Biden administration or Biden is the face of communism in this country right now.
I agree. And, you know, if you go to the post office and they try and give you the Pete Seeger stamps, don't know
Yeah, I
thanks.
won't take it.
Give me some with an American flag on it.
Right.
Because I'm not going to put a Pete Seeger stamp on
Correct.
an envelope that I send out.
But it is amazing. I mean, that you actually
is.
have that state of affairs. I mean, they really are telegraphing who they are to anybody with just a modicum of wherewithal
Yeah.
to listen and to understand
Yeah.
what's going on. Because you could never, ever, ever expect a stamp, I mean, for that matter, with anybody with traditional American values.
No, absolutely not. You know, for those who don't know it, the Communist Party endorsed Barack Obama in both of his runs for president.
Right.
In 08 and 2012. So he was endorsed by the communists. So
Right.
that right there, they didn't even field a communist candidate
That's
for
right.
president in either one of those elections because they didn't need to.
They had theirs. They had one already.
They had theirs.
They had one that was
exactly.
likely going to win. So
Exactly. You know, and if you look at the policies that are being instituted, if you read the Communist Manifesto, everything that Biden is doing is coming out of that. Every communist play throughout history.
right.
And this is where people mess up so much. You know, and it's interesting, you see these man on the street type interviews and questions. These people can't even answer basic questions.
Right.
So how are they going to understand the history of communism and how that evolved over time?
Especially if they don't even understand their own basic, the civics associated with their own basic, you know,
Yeah.
their own, the basic civics associated with their own society.
Exactly.
And they do not.
They do not. Well, you know, I saw one the other day. They asked a girl, "What's the capital of the U.S.?" She said, "Well, the U.S. doesn't have a capital."
Right.
Well, you know,
Wrong.
wrong exactly. You know, the lack of history knowledge, historical knowledge,
And that's been done on purpose.
It's been done on purpose. In fact, you know, when I got my degree, a business degree, I argued that, you know, we've got all these courses that you want us to take, but there's no history requirement.
Right.
I tried to get switched off from sociology to history.
To history, right.
You know, I said, look, you know, people need to know history. History is a vital part of who we are and how we got to this point. But they want to destroy history.
And rewrite it.
And rewrite it. That's exactly right. You know, it's just like watching a miniseries, and they declared year zero.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Year zero. All the statues were torn down. All the history books were burned. Everything was destroyed, and it was year zero. And who did they target? The youth.
That's right.
Who
That's
did
right.
Hitler target? The youth.
Who did the
Because
communists target?
The youth.
You look at every one of these violent communist revolutions or totalitarian revolutions, you know, throughout history, they always use the youth.
Yeah.
Okay, because the Khmer Rouge. Anybody who's seen the movie Killing Fields? Okay.
Oh, gee, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, young people have no concept of the value of life.
Mm-hmm.
They're easily indoctrinated. They're rabidly ideological once infected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they're merciless.
Yeah.
Okay, they're animals.
Yeah.
All right, because
That's
they haven't accrued any life wisdom or any concepts of mercy or anything. So they are the foot soldiers okay, for these communist movements. When the communists were assaulting South Africa and taking it over through the African National Congress, their foot soldiers were these young people that would go around the townships necklacing people, hacking people's arms off and putting a tire over a tire on them and light it on fire.
Yeah.
That was a common practice. That was Winnie Mandela. That was Nelson Mandela's wife. I know we're also Mao and Nelson Mandela, but he was also a communist. He was in prison, okay, and for being a communist terrorist, he wrote a book called How to Be a Good Communist. I'm not ignoring those things. Those are facts.
Right.
Those are actual facts. And South Africa now is where we're headed. I mean, you want to see a good example of what happens. You know, whatever problems they had from a societal standpoint, and certainly I think their organizational structure wasn't nearly as good as ours. It wasn't a communist dictatorship.
Right.
And it was prosperous, and it was fundamentally free in the sense that nobody was compelled to stay there.
Right.
Okay. And now it's a complete, I'm going to paraphrase something Donald Trump would say, you know, it was a complete you-know-what hole, and it's one of the most dangerous places in the world to be. Johannesburg is terrible.
Yeah,
and
absolutely
anybody you talk to from there will tell you this is what they're doing to what they did to South Africa is exactly what they're doing to this country.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's the thing. We have immigrants that come into this country from Venezuela, from China, from Russia, from Bulgaria, Romania, Czech, and they all say the same thing. They say, what we see happening here is what happened in our country.
That's right.
That's what happened to us. That's why we left those places.
That's right.
And yet what we have here, we have largely ignorant, highly educated, but largely ignorant individuals out there who don't know history, who don't understand any of the things going on now, who, when they hear the term McCarthy, they think, oh, he was bad. He blackballed people and he had all this. He was bad. Well, you know, some of his methods may not have been great, but the bottom line is he wasn't wrong.
That's correct.
We had communists infiltrating government, universities, churches, schools, and we're where we are now because of that.
That's right. That's right.
Because he was used by the establishment, by the insiders, to make anti-communist the new semi-fascist.
Correct.
Or the old semi-fascist.
Right, that's right.
That's what they did. What they're doing to us, trying to call us semi-fascist, is the same thing they did to the anti-communist in that day.
Well, I think they're overstepping a little bit because even, I mean, I don't know how it's all going to shake out. They seem to have pretty strong grip on some of the levers of power, but I think it's tenuous, and I think they're a little bit worried because, you know, there are some fundamental structural aspects to our constitutional republic that are hard to overcome. One of them is, you know, this is a very heavily armed population.
Yes, it is.
And despite all their attempts to wrest our guns from us, hasn't happened yet. Now, there may come a time here when they just issue some edicts and say, yeah, we're collecting them and severe penalties for. That'll be the truth. That'll be the ultimate test. The ultimate test will be, do people turn over their firearms?
Yeah.
But if they do, and if that's the direction it takes, if you haven't figured it out yet, then you should know that we're in deep blank trouble.
Deep trouble. That's exactly right. And Biden has alluded that he will use executive orders to do just that.
That's right. That's right. Well, I mean, fine. Let's see what the compliance is.
Let's see what the compliance is. And you know what? I don't care how communist you are, or how ruthless you are, or how much of a scoundrel you are. You don't want to get shot.
You don't want to get shot. That's exactly right.
You know?
It's easy to wield power and to kick doors in when you know there's nobody standing on the other side with anything other than a kitchen knife or maybe a baseball bat. But you've got, you know, you've got an AR because
fully automatic.
That's right. The state gave it to you.
Exactly. You know, that's what we saw. We saw heavily armed stormtroopers raid Mar-a-Lago. Arrest Roger Stone.
That's right.
You know, everywhere they go, they've got guns. You know, this is being done at the barrel of a gun. If you think only you know, foreign countries do this, it's happening here, people.
Well, bear in mind, I mean, Mao Zedong wrote in his little red book, political power grows from the barrel of a gun.
Yes, he did.
And that is a fundamentally true thing. Okay. Now, how you address that fact in formulating your society is very important. Most societies take that fact and they use it to the favor of the elites and the authoritarians who control those societies. The founders of this country very magnanimously said, we're going to leave that power in the hands of the people. What can be more democratic? Little d, favorite word among the, what can be more democratic than an armed population? That is the ultimate vote, okay? And so if you're going to say that the consent that we operate according to the consent of the governed, well, the governed have to have a way of not consenting if the heavy hand of government decides to ignore elections or ignore fundamental constitutional principles, and they have been ignoring those principles. Okay, I just saw a news story a little while ago where they have California has their legislature is going to establish or has established a 10-man commission that's going to decide what the pay rate will be at fast food restaurants in that state. Okay. Now, all I heard, now this is what was frustrating. Not so much that they've done that. Nothing surprises me coming out of the People's Republic of California.
Right.
Okay. What was frustrating is that this was on that show, Journal Editorial Report that comes on in the afternoons on Saturday with Paul Guizot and all on Fox. The entire discussion was all about what would the economic impact of that would be. Not one person said, "Isn't that unconstitutional? Can the state legislature appoint a 10-man commission that says, well, we're just going to outright regulate, okay, what an entire industry is allowed to do?" Talk about fascism.
Yeah.
Okay, that is quintessential fascist behavior.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
I didn't hear anybody say that, well, there's going to be an immediate lawsuit, or all I heard was, well, it'll probably, unintended consequences, and these people don't understand the economy. And they were saying lots of true things. But the immediate and first blush response should be, this is absolutely unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Okay, how can you even think about such a thing? All right, but that's where we are. And so I worry because even the people who are supposed to know better and have some level of education about these things, they're even kind of sorry at the analysis of what's going on right now.
Well, that's the problem. That's this whole philosophy of, well, everyone needs to have their opinion heard and everyone needs to have a seat at the table. Well, when you're wrong, and it needs to be pointed out that you're wrong. I'm sorry. To sit there and negotiate with a communist or a terrorist or any group like that, well, why are you doing it?
Right.
To sit around and discuss these things, like you say, and nobody's going to the very basic principle.
That's right. Well, it's the fundamentals.
The fundamental. It's just like with the forgiveness of student loan debt.
Right.
Well, number one, you know what? You made the loan. Number two, I shouldn't have to pay off your debts.
Well,
that's the most basic principle.
Well, it's unfair in every way. First of all, you got lots of people who either decided, you know what, I'm making the calculation that it's not worth it to me to go invest in some 4-year educational program. I don't think I'm going to benefit. I'd rather work for the 4 years, get a trade, something. Okay. So it's not fair to them that they have to pay. They have to foot the bill. It's certainly not fair to people who did pay their loans off. They made a judgment that I'm going to borrow this money just like I would if I were investing in a business or buying a car or a home. I'm going to make this investment, and I'm making it on the assumption that it's going to have a return. Well, plenty of people make bad investments. Anybody who's put some money in the stock market knows that. My favorite joke is one of them is, How do you get $2 million? How do you get $1 million out of the stock market? You invest $2 million.
That's about the case here lately.
So people who made bad investments in their educational choices, I'm sorry. And this argument that 18-year-olds don't have the wherewithal and the maturity to make the decisions. Okay, fine, but 12-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 5-year-olds have the wherewithal to decide that they don't want to be the gender that they were born into, and that they're gonna undergo, radical medical procedures like hysterectomies and castration. That they're appropriately mature and able to make those decisions. But an 18-year-old can't make a decision about a loan. And then about the best way to spend those educational dollars on something ridiculous like gender studies, or even sociology is a complete waste of that money.
It absolutely is. The number of positions out there that pay well for those career fields, for those degree fields, very small.
Right.
If you're going into physics, astrophysics, things of that nature, well, there's a demand for that.
There's a demand for that, and first of all, if somebody comes out of undergraduate and they have a degree in physics. Actually, there aren't a lot of jobs per se that you can go get as an undergraduate physics.
Right.
But you can get a lot of jobs because the person says, you know what?
Yeah.
A physics curriculum means you can think.
That's
you can
exactly
digest
right.
material. You can do at least basic math.
Yeah.
Okay. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, in other
Yeah.
words, the bar is so bad now. I mean, to me, all a college degree really represents is that you probably can read reasonably well.
Well, and in many cases, that's not even
Well, that's
accurate.
what I'm saying. I'm nominate, barely.
Barely.
Okay.
Yeah. Comprehension may not be there.
Right.
But, you know, that is part of the whole development of the tyrannical mind out there.
Right.
And we're going to talk about that when we come back. We've got to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to talk about trying to understand this tyrannical mindset.
Well, we've talked about that before. It's kind of it's really just as an academic curiosity. What is it that drives some of these people, like the Klaus Schwabs and and to me, it's a fascinating subject because I would like to understand it because it's so alien to me.
Well, we're going to talk about it a little bit. We may not gain an understanding of it, but we're going to talk about it a little bit when we come back. So stay tuned for more America in Danger. We'll be right back.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, Attorney at Law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
Safe and secure. These two words are simple yet powerful. In order to feel this way, you should know that you have the tools necessary to provide safety and security for yourself and your loved ones. As with any tools, learning how to properly use them is best learned from experts who we know we can trust. Experts who have a proven track record and a commitment to serve and protect. Enroll now in Sheriff Keystone's North Carolina Concealed Handgun Carry class, taught at the CPF Training Center in Rocky Mount. Sheriff Stone utilizes a first-in-class classroom environment and indoor firing range. This ensures a training experience that is welcoming to both first-time firearms students and those with more experience. An attentive staff that takes time to teach students the legal requirements of becoming a permitted concealed carry citizen. In addition, Sheriff Clee Atkinson teaches students situational awareness, self-defense, and skills needed to avoid becoming a victim. As you know, Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson have committed their lives to serving and protecting. There is a reason Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson's class book in advance. Come learn from two of the region's most seasoned and professional public servants. Safety and security, two simple but powerful words that can be a part of who you and your family are. Call 252-813-8898. Register today.
Every dad deserves comfort that's just right. And at the Badcock Home Furniture and More Father's Day sale, that's exactly what you'll find. Starting with buy one, get one free recliners. Plus, save hundreds on reclining sofas and sectionals. And get a free foundation with select mattresses, including Sealy. Find the styles and savings that are just right for Dad. Only at Badcock Home Furniture and More. Just right.
All right, we're back. And before the break, we were talking a little bit about the tyrannical mindset, without which many of these efforts and agendas just fall on their face.
Correct.
You know, and there was a good article on Zero Hedge by Tyler Durden, and I want to read a paragraph from this, kind of set the tone here. You know, it said almost all people desire power to some degree. So the tyrannical mindset is not exclusive to the Stalins, the Maos, the Hitlers of history. It's a deep-rooted shadow that lurks in the majority of us at times. It is this condition that political tyrants try to exploit to their advantage, because no authoritarian government can ever be successful without the help of millions of little tyrants supporting them. So
That's right.
You know, we saw that. We saw that firsthand. You have lived history.
That's correct.
You have seen these things in play, in practice.
I mean, as much as I think the whole, and obviously you're referring to COVID, as much as the COVID response was highly destructive and onerous, really it represented a great opportunity to see in microcosm, it depends on how you judge it, I'm judging it compared to what they want to do, like in the realm of climate change and all, but it's a great opportunity to see in a short period of time in microcosm exactly how these people operate and how they think. I mean, I'm talking about empirical, firsthand evidence of the kind of psychopathy that is associated with these people's behavior and the little tyrants that you talk about, the mass Karens and the completely disconnected from reality, anti-science, lunatic response to a pandemic that had, what, a 0.23% overall infection death rate?
Yeah, 0.23%.
0.23%, right. Irrational response to it. That is the mark of a tyrant.
Absolutely. You know, and years back, I became fascinated with groupthink. Right, because groupthink contributed to so many disasters that we've seen over time, over history.
Right.
If you remember the Deepwater Horizon,
yes.
that was groupthink.
Yep.
I've seen it firsthand on a job site where everyone agrees that this is the way we need to go, and then afterwards it's like, whew, why did we do that?
Right. Well, that was a mistake.
How did this disaster take place? Well, no one can point the finger because everyone was party to it because it was groupthink.
Right. A hive mind.
A hive mind. Everyone reinforcing everyone else. Well, it's the same basic principle except geometrically increased under this tyrannical mindset. And we saw that, you know, in the COVID thing. We had people demanding that you do irrational things.
Right.
Because it made them feel safe.
That's right.
We still see it. We still see people out there wearing masks. And
to the point where they would literally make statements like, we have to protect the vaccinated from the unvaccinated.
Now, that one just...
I mean, if that's not an artifact of cognitive dissonance and absolute, disconnection from reality, I don't know what is. To me, that should be a T-shirt.
Yeah, it should be. You know, and just so many of the things. You know, well, natural immunity. Oh, that's no good. You got to get the vaccination.
Right.
Well, natural immunity to any disease that you've recovered from is
almost always superior. I think
superior.
with the exception of maybe tetanus, is what I remember reading about that back in the day.
Some things you're not going to gain immunity from.
That's
you're going to die.
That's correct. That's correct.
But diseases that you survive, typically, the immunity you've gained, the antibodies you've gained, they're natural antibodies. Your body has made these. They're not some mRNA vaccine that has disastrous results in the general population.
Well, I was fascinated by this article because, first of all, this subject comes up some, and literally for me, it's just a point of academic curiosity. What is it that drives some of these people to want to control the actions of others to the extent of imposing worldwide rubrics to dictate to people what they can do? Electric cars and eating bugs and all these things that are emanating from things like the World Economic Forum. And without going into a lot of the detail, the fundamental answer, according to this article, is that these people are psychopaths.
Yeah.
They have all the characteristics of a psychopath, which are about 1% of the population. And it goes on to point out that psychopathy normally doesn't really manifest in people in an obvious way. A lot of times these people go on about their lives and they have these sort of tendencies. A lot of them have a lot of failed relationships or end up in prison. They're unable to do certain things, but it really is a small portion of the population. But they have a desperate need for control.
Right.
Okay. And I think when you combine that with access to large amounts of money and influence, and I think that's where a lot of these people, that's where this stuff comes from. And you know, well, I'm not going to say I'm a backpedal. I don't know that I think that's where it comes from, but that's as reasonable an explanation as any, because I sure don't understand it. I have a hard time understanding the psychology of the people that want to destroy the greatest engine of wealth production in the world, the greatest and freest society ever, that gives people the most opportunity and the most ability to operate according to their own self-enlightened interests. Okay, I simply can't fathom what's going on. So this is a reasonable explanation. He goes on to say it's really, and what makes a person a psychopath? They say it's probably just something that a tiny fraction of people are born with.
Sure,
Okay.
I can believe that, and
Yeah.
I think that the minions of the tyrannical minded are driven by a need for security, for safety,
And control.
and control of
Right.
their environment.
That's right.
They feel like they're threatened by, and we know that because they feel threatened.
But it's as if the regulating mechanism for figuring out when you have enough control in your life to be satisfied, it's like when they interfere with the feedback loop in the mice so that they don't know when they're finished eating, and they eat till they blow up and they're fat. You know, I mean, okay. It's like there's no feedback loop in these people's minds
Right.
for when have you achieved enough security in your world to not have to worry about, you know, your comfort zone being violated. And and he's right about that. That's what this author is saying. He's saying everybody wants a certain amount of control in their life, and you do. You want to make sure that if you've got a good situation, you want to do the things that you can to maintain it. That's an element of control. But I'm not interested in imposing on my neighbor a requirement that he wear a mask if he's within 6 feet of me.
Right.
You know.
Well, you know, I think part of that regulating loop is developed in people who work for things, who strive and develop and grow and work for things, because they feel like, well, I can accomplish things.
Right.
I think the people who are given everything, who are sheltered, who are protected, who are provided from the government, who are government basically
Wards of the state, yeah.
wards of the state basically, and that's a lot of people out there. And I'm not talking about people who are institutionalized. I'm talking about people who look to the state to regulate the climate, to regulate power, to regulate utilities,
And to regulate everybody else's behavior so that it doesn't influence them in any negative way.
Yes. You know, government to force you to use certain pronouns.
That's right.
To do
That's
this
right.
and to those people never develop that feedback loop that says, hey, you know what? I can manage.
Right.
I don't need to control all these people around me. I don't need to control every element of my environment because I'm resilient. I can survive.
And you have to have a certain element of acceptance that there is risk in existing. Okay.
That's right.
There's a certain and that's lost too in this sort of. And it may be true that, you know, multiple generations who have it very soft and easy with no real requirements placed on them simply can't carry on that way because they lose sight of what it took to build the cushy existence. Our cushy existence is artificial. Okay? Yeah. A quick return to the state of nature, it's a very different life for people.
You got that right.
I mean, a very different. All of these fantasy beliefs about gender and the equality concepts and all that stuff goes out the door. It quickly becomes survival of the fittest.
Yeah,
and
does.
That's a world you really don't want to return to. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know, going back to the development of confidence and being resilient and knowing that you can survive certain things. You know, people nowadays, the younger generations, want to be protected from every element.
Right.
They don't feel that they can handle all of these things, you know. My generation, you go out, you pick up a hammer, you learn to drive a nail. Yeah, well, you know what? You smash your thumb a time or two.
That's right.
But you gain the confidence to be able to drive that nail.
That's right.
Without smashing your thumb, and you know that you'll live through smashing your thumb.
Right, that's right.
You know, that's how those things are developed in most people. But we've coddled generations in schools and taught them that, well, you know what, microaggressions threaten you.
Well, or just the everybody gets a trophy, you know, mentality.
Everybody gets a trophy. That's right.
I mean, you know, life is winning and losing, and
it is.
You're always going to have some wins, and you're going to have some losses. You're going to have some defeats. If you can't, if you can't handle failure, okay, then you're not going to be a successful person.
That's exactly right.
You're going to be a
You are
miserable
not.
wretch because you're always looking for somebody else to blame
Yeah.
for failures. And everybody has failures.
Well, that's right. That's
You know,
exactly right.
And so this sounds like we're being a little overly philosophical about all this, but like we're doing some kind of self-help, series here.
Well, you never know.
But there's a point to this, and the point is that this is what these authoritarians and these communists exploit. They exploit these people that have these issues. Okay,
That's correct.
And the fact that we have a growing number of people with these issues probably stems from the fact that we have this very soft society, and a lot of these liberal concepts of child rearing and performance evaluation and what represents hard work have crept in, and now people are insulated from our true nature.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are easy people to exploit. All these Antifa types, all you have to do is look at them and you say, yeah, I see what's going on here.
Yeah.
They're just miserable. They're mad
yeah.
at a
Miserable
card they were
individuals.
dealt by life, and there's nothing that will make them happy. But they're happy to destroy
Exactly.
other people's work, other people's efforts, and to think that their problems are based on the fault of society, or based on society.
And that's the minions of those who support tyranny.
Right.
Now, we've got about a minute, but I did want to get this in. The climateers, the hysterical climate alarmists, and they are hysterical. They're not going to like this.
Well, they're like the COVID crowd.
And they are like the COVID crowd. And it's used for control, and it's used to manipulate people who gravitate toward that issue. But bottom line is, good news for Australia. They have not seen any warming in nearly 8 years.
So they can delay
I'm sorry, 10 years.
10 years, right.
And the planet itself has not warmed any in 8 years. So I guess that all of this talk, all of these liberals talking about all of this sequestering carbon and limiting gasoline vehicles and all that, I guess the climate heard that and said, oh, better back off.
Well, it certainly begs maybe a re-examination of a climate crisis.
Exactly.
I hardly call it a crisis worthy of completely upending Western society and destroying our ability to have energy, okay, which we talked about ad nauseum on this show. But I mean, inexpensive, cheap energy is the linchpin of the cushy existence we've been talking about.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and it's also the thing that makes it possible for other nations around the world to join those in the first world,
Yes, it has.
forcing them to operate off unreliable things like biomass and windmills and solar panels is criminal.
It is absolutely criminal. And with that, we are out of time. Next week, I'll be running a pre-recorded show, so you can tune in for that. It'll be interesting.
Okay.
And we'll be back the week after that. Check out our YouTube channel and like and subscribe. And with that, have a great week. I'm Robert Crescione.
I'm John Gatsis.
Good night.